Hello and welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining me. The lovely Julia and I, are just back from our gallivanting up to Scotland. If you haven't been watching recently, yes, the lovely Julia and I have been up to Scotland in order to take part in a wonderful health event. In fact, the Barbara O'Neill Health Summit. And here's a picture of the lovely Julia, myself, and the very wonderful Barbara O'Neill. Have a look at that. We were up there, as you may or may not know, because we were asked to MC and meet lots of people, talk about truth, freedom, and all the rest of it. Now, whilst we were up in Scotland, up in a place called Crieff, at the Crieff Hydro Hotel, we were very aware of the slightly cooler temperature than it is down south, on the south coast, where I normally live. But more than that, we saw some glorious sunshine. And so I was very interested to find out from people if much of the old chemtrails happened up there, you know, the geoengineering in the sky. And many people were saying, do you know what, this is actually quite unusual to have glorious sunshine. Normally, particularly in the middle belt across places like Glasgow, Edinburgh, and that sort of thing. On that middle belt, there is a lot of chemtrailing going on. Well, it was only on the last day that we saw a bit of grim weather, which we actually had to drive back in, unfortunately. But it was very, very lovely. But coming back down south, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, coming back down south, as we approached London, we started to see up in the sky the chemtrails. We saw them as broad as day, as they say. And I've got a few pictures to show you. And they just got worse and worse and worse as we got down. And at first, started to think, oh, hang on, this is over Oxfordshire. And then as we got over to High Wycombe on the M40, and then we realised it was over London. And I started to think, oh, hang on a minute, maybe it's just the aeroplanes taking off over Heathrow. Not that I don't live in that area, so I thought, well, maybe it's just, you know, as a result of. But as we got closer and closer, it was clearly obvious that the aeroplanes taking off were far too low for this myriad of chemtrails. And as you'll see, it, as Julia said, it looks like a discarded maths book with all the graph drawings and everything. So let me show you some of the pictures that we've got. So from the Barbara O'Neill event, we came down south, and this is what we started to see. Look at this. There's the sun there, and these chemtrails are just absolutely everywhere. There's a slightly different version. These are the more like coming down and approaching London. We were very clearly seeing them. And in all directions. It wasn't as if it was on a flight path that you could chart and go, oh yeah, they're all headed in one direction, Gatwick or Heathrow or anywhere else. And I did think to myself, if you took a picture of these and you were able to record the time, maybe you could see if the flight paths lined up with anything. But what was fascinating is this is concentrated in one large area, I don't know, 50 miles square, something like that. As you can see, running out of pictures here now, but there it is. Anyway, and thanks to Julia for taking those pictures from the van as we hurtled south. But what was interesting is when we looked left and right, the skies were clear. It was clearly that London and the surrounding area was very heavily targeted. And as we got back down to Worthing over the South Downs, not so much. So absolutely fascinating when you're travelling up and down the breadth of England and Wales or Scotland and whatever, the whole country, to see the amount of what's going on. This is why we should never stop talking about it. Because if we forget, if we just start to normalise it, then people will forget about it. We still got to point this out because farmers are losing their crops. Somebody got in touch with me, or I read it somewhere, I saw it, get so much information, that a farmer said he had his soil tested and it was 5 times, it contained 5 times more the amount of aluminium he would expect or had recently seen in it. 5 times. He said, curiously, that his GM crops, so it may have been in America, I'm not sure if we grow GM crops in any great number here. You can correct me if that's, well, whichever way it is. But anyway, he said his GM crops were growing very well, thank you very much. But his heritage crops, real ones that provide real food, they were struggling. They barely managed to get off the ground. And you can see how whatever it is they're spraying in the skies, whenever they're doing it, it is poisoning the land. And we have to be very, very much opening our mouths, jabbering about this, telling people, let's make people aware of this. This is not normal. This does not happen in real life. But it's fascinating. I was trying to work out how many aeroplanes must be doing this. And are some commercial flights just programmed so that the pilots don't know that as they're going along and they approach a certain area, like around London, because these were really high, that suddenly it comes on, sprays for, 5-10 minutes, and then switches off. Because this was all concentrated in one area. As I say, at least a 50-mile sort of radius, and you could see it from where we were driving as we approached to it. And you just think, this isn't just one or two planes going around doing specific spraying. And sometimes you see these maps, and people have been putting up these maps where they look like they're mowing the lawn in the sky, where they're just going backwards and forwards. These must be commercial flights. And you could see, as we were driving along, obviously keeping one eye on the road. Well, I've only got one eye, so I was flitting between the two. But you could see one coming this way and one coming that way. And there was a time when I thought, my goodness, these two are going to intersect and crash. But obviously they were distance in there, which told me that if they are correct distance away from one another, it couldn't have been contrails, because they would have got out of whatever that layer was. So it had to be chemtrails. It's too many of them. And of course, the sky starts to mist over as a result of all this stuff interacting with it. It's a bit like, as somebody described it to me, it's a bit like araldite. You have your master substance and then you have your catalyst. And you often do see these chemtrails next to each other, so that as they come together, they fuse. And then that fusing of the two substances is like the catalyst switching it on, and you get this terrible mist that blocks out the sun. I am thrilled to say that down here, we're about 60 miles from London, so the South Downs acts as its own little mini environment. We are fortunately not chemtrailed today, but there was some, but not anything like. So please keep the conversation going. Just because I haven't mentioned it, let's not forget what they are doing to us, because we're breathing that in. It is poisoning us and making us ill. And that's another reason why we were very keen to learn on those ways to detox from the Barbara O'Neill Health Summit. Now, I've done an interview with Barbara, and hopefully I should be able to bring that to you very shortly. I'm waiting for the boys up there. They had a podcast studio to send me the link, and then I'll upload it. It was absolutely fascinating. Both Julia and I enjoyed it, and Julia had Barbara touch a very special precious stone that she's collected up, different people who we've met who've touched it and put into their high vibration, which is lovely to see. Anyway, I'll be back to normal now. I'll go and have a shave and sort myself out, and we'll get back to our interviews and the normal monologues. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, from me, and the lovely Julia is just off screen. Bye-bye.